Hello, nice to see you all here. This is my friend Irina Shaar, and I'm
Hello.
so delighted to have her on here today. I'm very, very excited to share her with you. Um, I just met her recently, and I feel like I've known her for ages. We just really, really connected. And I welcome you all on here. I appreciate all of you so much for coming to my channel and watching every week and seeing the people that I introduce. I'm not going to introduce you all today. I'm going to skip that because I think we have a lot more things to talk about. But I do want you to know that I appreciate every single one of you coming on here and watching. And I see your names over there. I see who you are. I know who you are. So Irina, you started a YouTube channel this summer, right?
Right. So
And it,
it's just started 3 months ago, basically. It's called Fiberchats. And I interview different fiber artists from different kind of arts from all over the world. I had some knitters, some knitwear designers, indie dyers, crocheters, embroidery people, weavers, spinners, like all kinds of people.
It's called Fiberchats. So it could
Right.
be anything fiber related. And I don't know if any of you have seen Irina's YouTube channel. I'm going to show it to you right now. I'm going to share it with you. This is her YouTube channel. And you can see she just interviewed me. We did
Yeah.
that a couple weeks ago, but it went live today. So you can watch that. If you haven't watched it already, you can watch it after the live stream here. But what I want you to do, I want you to go over to her channel. It's called Fiberchats. You can just go to YouTube and you could just do that right now if you want to on a different device or something and hit that subscribe button and then hit the notification bell because then you'll get notifications when she does a new video. But she's just a brand new YouTuber. She has 1.11 thousand subscribers. So she's just a baby YouTuber and she needs all the help she can get if you want to go over there and subscribe to her YouTube channel. This is her content so far. She's done 51 interviews in the last 3 months. And what I love about this is that these people are not the people that you're seeing interviewed on everybody else's interview channel. She's choosing people from all over the world. And you know, there are so many creative people out there. Like we were talking right before going live today, you know, of possibly running out of interviewees. But you know, there's so many creative people out there, and there are so many people that have not been heard from yet that it's like a bottomless pit.
Right.
She can choose all these people. So take a look. Some of these people you may even recognize, very awesome people. So I'm going to come back to Irina. What made you interested in knitting to begin with? Let's go back to the very beginning. How did you become interested in knitting or fiber arts?
Well, it's funny because when I was interviewing you, we sort of touched on that. And you said that you believe that there are natural born knitters out there, people who like easily take on knitting, like everything seems easy. And I feel like I was probably like one of them in my previous life. So I started like the traditional story. I think I was 7 or 8 years old. I spent the summer with my grandma, and she was very handy. She was a seamstress. She knew how to knit. She was a crocheter. She knew tatting. So she was like very handy. And so she taught me how to knit. I don't think I knew how to cast on or cast off. I think it was just knit and purl. So she sent me back home, and we lived like thousands of miles away. So she sent me back home with a ball of yarn and 2 needles. I came home, and that was the end of it. And then I haven't touched knitting until 4 years ago. And 4 years ago, a friend of mine was pregnant with her fourth and last child, and she said that she never had a baby shower. And I was like, let me throw you a baby shower. And I was thinking, what can I make for the baby, something special? And I went on YouTube and I saw these little booties being knitted. And I was like, maybe I should try knitting them. And that was my first project. And I don't think I spent the day ever since not knitting.
You're one of those people, like I've told you before, that you've always been a knitter. It just had never crossed your path before. It's just like some people are born to be musicians, some people are born to be writers or scientists, or, but you were born to be a knitter and to be involved with yarn going through your fingers.
You know what
So,
I find funny though? Like I'm very partial to Shetland knitting, Shetland lace knitting specifically. But like I find Shetland fascinating in general. And I feel like I always joke that like in my past life I used to be a Shetlander. And the reason why I find it so similar is like I was interviewing Hazel Tyndall and she was saying how her mom was basically like a production line. Like her mother was knitting all this sweater, the yokes for the sweater, and then somebody else would knit on machine the
right,
body of the sweater. And the girls, her sisters and her, the first skills they were taught is how to assemble it, basically, how to
seaming them.
right, how to put them together. And I remember my mom, so my grandmother was very handy and she used that. Basically, it was like a second job to make extra money for the family. And I remember my mom telling me like the early stories how she was sewing so much that her shoulder was hurting. So she couldn't sew. So she was asking the kids, my mom and her sister and brother, to turn the wheel on the machine so she could like still sew, but she couldn't move her arm much.
Right.
So for my mother, growing up with the mother who could do everything, and my mom can do everything. She can knit, she can crochet, she can sew. She's like very handy. She hates it. She hates all of it passionately. She thinks it's the sign of poverty. She thinks it's the sign of the necessity. It's something you must do. So as soon as she had a choice of like go and buy store-bought item, it was like freeing experience for her. And I find it very interesting that like every time I was interviewing Shetlanders, I would ask that. I would like, your mother forced you basically to knit. You were like living in the environment where it was not a choice. Like everybody was knitting after school. Did you ever resent it? And none of them did. Like they all absolutely loved it, and they still love and they still do it. And I find it like very interesting.
Right, right. It's the same thing, it's like I love teaching about knitting, and to me it's not a chore.
Right.
It's something. In fact, my friends go, "Oh, Suzanne, you need to cut out. You're working too hard." I love doing it. I
Right.
love doing it. That's what makes me want to get up in the morning, you know. And everybody needs that. Whether it's but on the other hand, there are people who have to do a certain thing and they do it only because they have to do it, not because they want to do it. It does not bring them joy.
Right. But I feel
So,
like I always had that sort of creative streak in me because I loved embroidery. I loved cross stitching. Before I got back to knitting, there was always some sort of craft. Like I remember being a teenager and my favorite thing was hand hemming seams of garments. Like I could spend hours. I didn't even care about the finished object. I didn't care about
you
actual.
liked the motion of it. Right,
Right. And it's
right,
very similar to knitting if you think
right.
about it.
So, what made you think that you wanted to start making a channel and doing interviews? Because you jumped right into the interviews. It's not just YouTube videos, it's
Right.
specifically interviews. How did that percolate and come to be?
Well, so I was very active over COVID on Instagram, and my following base became larger. And I was thinking that I don't really know many people. Like I knew, let's say, a couple hundred people with whom I was friends, but the rest of the followers, I had no idea who they were. And I'm sure they didn't know much about me either. So I was thinking that I was actually talking to Alison Randall, who is a Shetland Fair Isle designer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been testing for her a few times over COVID, so we became friends. And I was talking to her and I said, well, what do you think about this idea? What if we went live on Instagram and I would ask you some questions and like introduce you to my followers? and Allison had full-blown panic attack. Like she was like, I've never done that. I wouldn't know what to say. You would have to write all the questions beforehand. And I was like, okay, let's just think about it. And then I was talking to another friend, George Stein. He's indie dyer from Blue Fiber Company. And I was like, George, let me just like run this idea by you. What do you think? And he was like, let me just finish my cake and then we're going to do it.
Right, right.
So we started with that interview. So I started on Instagram and I was just trying to go live and introduce basically my followers to some of like amazing fiber artists there. And the most common comment I was getting is that, thank you for introducing us to this person, like we never knew about him. And that felt good because I felt like they were my friends. They were like really talented people. And I thought that everybody knew them, but apparently not. So they were getting new traffic, new followers. And, you know, it's like made me feel like I'm bringing something back to the community of knitters. And then my son, who actually works for YouTube, came home one day and he was like, listen, it's all very nice, but you're on the wrong platform because nobody can find you. Like, unless people know your name, they can't find you. So if you want like find Fiberchats, it's not something you can search. And YouTube being the second biggest search engine allows everybody to find what you're doing. So then I had to learn how to transfer all these videos from Instagram to YouTube, how to edit, how to upload, all these things, because I knew nothing. I never done that. So it was all a learning curve.
It is a learning curve. And it's like the stuff that I do and the videos that I make and everything. When I never intended to do any of that. You know, I mean, I did intend to it, but I didn't understand all that it took to get to that. You know, so let's talk about that a minute. Let's start at the very beginning because I know I've interviewed quite a few people, not near as many as you, but I understand the interview process. You know, sometimes you'll contact somebody, and first of all, you don't know how to contact them. You know, if it's somebody that you're not already friends with, how do you contact them? Do you contact them through Ravelry, through Instagram, through Facebook, or their website? You know, and then do they know who you are? I mean, they're getting this message from a perfect stranger out of the middle of nowhere, and you try to introduce yourself. You know, so what do you do? Tell me what you do.
Well, so at the very beginning, the first few interviews, probably like the first 10, I would say, maybe like 7. Those were like close friends of mine, people that I knew from Instagram, that I had relationship over the years, right? And then it became sort of like I would interview somebody and they would say, well, you know, you should interview this person. And I would say, well, can you introduce me? And that's how it started growing. And to me, that's the biggest compliment because it means that they enjoyed our chat. Like, because if they didn't like it, they would not think about introducing me to somebody else, right? So that's how it started. And there was a few cold calls that I just like always admired somebody. And I was like, you know, what's going to happen? Let me just write to them. So one of them was Hazel Tyndall, actually. I followed her for years. I thought so highly of her. And I decided, you know, what's going to happen? She's just not going to see my message. And I wrote her a message and I was saying, dear Miss Tyndall, I've been a huge admirer of yours. I'm starting this series of interviews. Would you like to try it? And she was like, absolutely. And not only that, but then she told me that she has been watching me knit for a couple of years and really admired my lace. And I was like, oh my God.
Isn't that awesome? Oh, what a huge compliment.
Right.
So like nice. But see, there's those people, and Hazel's one of them. She's a true knitter, you know, and something that you and I talked about when you interviewed me is that knitting, I don't think there's so much competition amongst knitters. Most knitters that are really true knitters, like Hazel and us and all these people that are watching, want to lift each other up.
Right.
We want to share our joy with knitting with other people. So she just is a natural at that. She's a natural at that. So heartwarming. That isn't that awesome? Makes you feel valuable.
Right. Hazel Tyndall has been interviewed like numerous times. She has a lot of videos that she put out herself. So I was like, okay, what can I do to show Hazel Tyndall from different side? And I watched hours and hours of all those interviews, and I listened to all the questions. And I mean, they were wonderful interviews. And I realized that everybody was asking about her speed because she's one of the fastest people in the world.
Right, right.
How she holds her needles, the knitting belt, all those things. And nobody actually asked about Hazel Tyndall. Nobody cared what she likes, what she does when she doesn't knit, how, like, like anything. And I was like, you know what? I want to interview her about her. So, and I think she also like appreciated that side, that it wasn't just, can you please demonstrate your,
Right.
but she was also like, I feel like people who have done all those interviews, they're getting tired of repeating the same thing. So it
Well,
was
what
good.
I like is you do have some really top name people that you've interviewed in your group, but you also have a lot of people that I've never heard of who are very worthy of being interviewed and sharing their craft, you know?
I mean, knitters in general, and like any craft people, right? We are solitary creatures. We sit home and like we just knit. And one of the people I interviewed that I thought was like absolutely brilliant craftsman was Grant Mahi. And Grant lives in New Zealand, and we've been friends for a while. And every time I see something that he does, I'm just blown away. So I was like, Grant, why won't you come to my channel? And he was like, dude, I'm nobody. Like, what do you mean?
Right, right,
And it turned out to be one of my favorite interviews because he does so many things. He weaves baskets. He knows how to spin. He knows how to do Shetland lace. He knows how to make kilns, and he hand stitches everything, and then he makes loincloth. I mean, this was
right.
like awesome for. I mean, the things that he does is like I didn't even know exist. And he just treats it. He was like, I was so concerned we're not going to have anything to talk about for 20 minutes. I could have talked to him for 7 days.
Right, exactly, exactly. I have to stop and tell you, you are getting an enormous amount of positive comments over here in the chat. Everybody's really, they say that they've really enjoyed your Instagram videos and your YouTube videos. Quite a few people have said they've gone over and hit the subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that for people who weren't on here when I said that. Um, and I think quite a few of your friends are in here too, which is really kind of cool.
Hi, guys.
So when you started doing, there's more to an interview than contacting people or creating a YouTube channel. For example, you have your artwork on your YouTube channel. You have to create your thumbnails. You have to have your branding. When did you start working on all of that in relationship to when you actually started doing the interviews?
So it was all sort of figuring out as you go. So the first 11 episodes happened live on Instagram. And then I took 1 week where I uploaded all those 11 episodes to YouTube, and that's how the channel started. And then I did a lot of research about how to create artwork, how to create all of that. So the person who helped me the most was my 15-year-old son, who, first of all, he hired his best friend to make the logo for Fiberchats. So if anybody wants a logo, I can recommend you a good kit. And then he was teaching me how to do editing because I had no idea. I didn't have a computer. I never did any editing. I didn't even know that he knows editing, but apparently he knew. And what he didn't know, he was asking his friends who somehow knew that. So all the skills that I have about uploading, editing, any of that, it came from my 15-year-old.
That's what they say. Ask your kids because they've grown up with the media, whereas to us it's,
Yeah.
yes. So you do your artwork and your thumbnails and your editing. Let's talk about editing. I know when I uploaded a 5-minute video today on seaming reverse stockinette. So it probably took me 10 minutes to film it because it's just a really short video. But it took me 2 hours to edit it because I wanted it to be exactly 5 minutes or under. And what I filmed was 6 minutes and 23 seconds. But which 1 minute and 23 seconds or little snippets could I cut out to make it just 5 minutes long? Because that was my goal, to make it 5 minutes. And so it takes, and watching it, and then making sure it flows. And there have been actually times when I've created a video and it looks really, really good to me, but unbeknownst to me, I did something stupid right before I uploaded it, and it isn't what uploaded isn't what I intended. You know, that has happened to me. And I have to, usually I have quite a few people who watch my stuff right away, and they'll say, oh, Suzanne, you need to, you know, there's a big boo-boo in that, you know, and I have to,
those people.
Yes, I love them. They're worth their weight in gold. And so I will, you know, take it off of being public till I can look at it and see what the issue is, and either, you know, I usually have to re-upload it, because the thing with YouTube, and a lot of people don't realize this, once you've uploaded your video, there's not much you can do to it to edit. There's a little bit of editing you can do, but it's not a whole lot. So people will say, I'll get comments like, well, can you show, like, a recent comment I got, somebody wanted me, I was showing how to do purl through the back loop, like doing a twisted rib, okay, where you knit through the back loop on the right side and you purl through the back loop on the wrong side. And they said, but can you show how to tink the purl through the back loop? Well, I can't go back and add that to that video.
Right.
I can't add something to the video. I can take away, but I can't add something to it. So, and people, I think people don't realize that once it's on YouTube, it's on YouTube.
Right, unless you completely take it out, but then you lose all the comments and everything.
Exactly, and you lose your view counts, you lose everything, the statistics associated with that video that affect your overall YouTube experience. So you have 1,100 subscribers. How many total views do you have, do you know?
25,000?
25,000. Okay, so when you first start out, in order to become monetized on YouTube, you need to have at least 1,000 subscribers and 10,000 views. So Irina has recently become monetized, so she can have advertisements.
A week ago, I was very excited.
Yes, advertisements associated with her videos. Now, she's not going to get rich quick, let me tell you. But it does help and when you watch those advertisements, and I'll tell you one thing I learned before I was interviewing Roxanne Richardson, is that the longer you watch the advertisement, the more money she makes, okay? So when the advertisement comes on, it says skip ad. If you push that right away, she will get a fraction of a penny for you watching it thus far. But if you watch it for a few seconds even, you don't have to watch it all the way through. Just watch it for a little bit, then hit skip the ad. She'll make a little bit more money. And also, I want to tell you, for fans of Irina that are on here, that when she puts out a new video, the more people that watch it right away, when she first puts it out, that lifts it up into the algorithm for YouTube so that they start sharing it with other people who might have similar interests. So then her video will become one of those that you see on the side as a suggested video to watch next. In order for her to get that status, she needs a little momentum, which means quite a few people watching the video right after it comes out, and that kind of shoves it up into that area on YouTube where they start putting it as a suggested video, and then you get a lot more views. And while I'm on the advertisement portion of this for her, subscribing helps, sharing videos on other social media. For example, let's say that you're in a group on Ravelry, and it's an appropriate conversation, like let's say somebody's talking about Shetland knitting. You could say, oh my God, I saw this most awesome interview on Fiberchats, and you can put a link to it in the conversation. so that maybe other people will go and look at the video. That's the way you get more views, is by your current viewers sharing the video with their friends. And I always say that on my videos, please share with your friends. And I don't mean share with your friend sitting next to you. I mean share on Ravelry, share on Pattern Work, share on all the Instagram, share on Facebook, share on Reddit, Quorum, whatever you get on, you can share it. And then that attracts other people who will subscribe and watch her video, and her audience will grow. And once her audience starts growing more, because the people she's interviewing are awesome, and her interviewing skills are really, really good. The interview that she and I did together, that was so fun. I felt so comfortable with her. And the conversation just flowed. It was really, really good. So it would be cool if she got a wider audience quicker, because she puts an enormous amount of work into this. So that's my plug. So subscribe and share, and hit a thumbs up on all of her videos that she puts up. So what have you learned? What do you think? Let's tell me like 3 or 4 things that you've learned, not from the people you've interviewed, but about making interviews. What have you learned that works for you?
It's funny because the very first thing I've learned is that you cannot prepare for the interview, or you shouldn't prepare for the interview. So I do a lot of prep. I do a lot of research. I try to find everything I can on the person I'm interviewing. I'm trying to learn everything I can about the craft that they're doing. I'm trying to see their social media and see what other interests they have. If they like cats, if they like to cook, if they like gardening, all that kind of thing. But then at the end of it, I found that if I'm trying to write down the questions and plan the interview, I'm concentrating on those questions so much that I'm not hearing what the person says. So instead of it, I stopped doing that. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about the person I'm interviewing, but then I'm totally freestyling. So I'm going into interview not having a single question in mind. And I'm letting the conversation bring the questions up.
Exactly.
And it's very interesting that like sometimes the most unexpected conversations happen from that. Because like, for example, so I told you we had this discussion as well. So I designed this shawl. Like I'm now officially saying that I designed this shawl.
Yes, you did design it.
So it's the first time when I didn't follow the pattern. I just decided to like what comes to mind and I'm gonna knit it. So I knitted this shawl, and then I was talking and wondering like, well, did I design it? And then Monique Boonstra, who is like a very good friend of mine, she's a Shetland lace designer, contacted me after some interview that I did with somebody else. And she was like, it really made me think. And I think you're wrong. And I think you did design it. And I think that by questioning yourself, you're questioning all of us.
Yes.
because now I'm asking, well, is Steven West a designer? He didn't create new stitches. Am I a designer? I use like existing Shetland lace motifs. And it's like really interesting to see how like interviews spike some conversations that you don't expect. You like completely don't see coming. Like you talk about one thing, but it makes other people think about different things, And another thing I learned that if you try to plan stuff, if you try to wait until the perfect moment, until you're ready, things never gonna happen. But so this whole YouTube thing happened without me planning anything. It was sort of like first I jumped in and then I figured out how to do Zoom, how to do editing, how to do any of that. So like if I was waiting, and I'm prone to wait until I'm a perfectionist in my nature. So I'm prone to wait until like the perfect moment, until I know everything, until I research everything. And I understand that like that was the bravest thing I ever done, just jumping right in, and just doing it and learning as I go. And it's like you mentioned editing. So the first time I was editing something, it probably took me about 12 hours to edit 45 minutes interview. Now it takes much shorter. Like I probably can edit like in 2.5, 3 hours an interview that's like 45 minutes. But it's also like I'm comfortable with certain skills, but then more ideas come up and I'm like, well, what if I did this? What if I tried that? And I'm starting to research that. So the editing on one hand becomes easier, but on the other hand becomes much more involved.
Right.
You
And
know?
you get over the learning curve of the editing itself, because that took me a long time to learn just what can I edit? What can I do? And which one of the tools do I want to use? I don't want to get so in depth into the editing that I'm creating a movie, you know. I just want it to be clear and concise. You got a really good compliment here from Monique Boonstra. She said, "Can I say that answering your questions, I gave answers I hadn't prepared. It is brilliant."
Thank you.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
So Sue McVicker asks a question. She says, "What drew you specifically to Shetland lace over other knitting types? I think it's one of my very favorites."
Well, it was actually like I blame it on Monique Boonstra. So I stumbled on her account on Instagram, and I just saw this beautiful lace, and I was like asking her, "Hi, like, love your account. What is it?" And she said, "Well, it's Shetland lace." I was like, "Okay, I never heard of Shetland lace. So what do you do when you never hear about something? You go and you research it." So I went to the local library and I was like, "Can you show me what you have on Shetland lace?" And they had one book. It was Elizabeth Lovick, The Magic of Shetland Lace. And on the very front of the cover of the book, there was this scarf.
Oh, yes, the heart. Yes.
And I was like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Let me knit it." So I'm jumping into knitting it without understanding that lace is difficult, that Shetland lace is probably one of the most difficult, and that that particular scarf is probably the most difficult thing in that book, just because it was pretty. And the yarn I used was just some like thicker recycled cashmere. So I didn't even understand that, like, about swatching, that you should swatch, that maybe you need the right thickness of yarn. So when I started blocking this thing, it was like 7 feet long, growing bigger. So I was in total panic mode, and I was typing. So Monique has a group on Facebook called Find Shetland Lace, and she's the administrator of that group. So I was writing in that group and I was like, okay, what do I do now? Like, I have this scarf and it's like, 7 feet unblocked. And the women there taught me how to stretch it wider so it doesn't go that long. So in the end, it worked, and it's still one of my favorites. And in your interview, you showed the sweater that you did that also, like, far from perfect, but you love it the most. So
Right.
This is the same thing. It's like it has very dear place in my heart.
Exactly, because it's your evolution. It's part of your evolution, and it's to be proud of.
Then the second thing that happened in that group, and that group at that point, I think I was one of the first 10 people to join that group. It was just starting. It was a brand new thing that Monique just organized. And all the rest of them were like very experienced Shetland lace knitters. So they decided to do a knit along for Love Dark from Heirloom Knitting. And it's probably like one of the most difficult patterns on the planet. So I decided to jump right in.
Of course. That's beautiful. Look at that. Right. Just gorgeous.
And that was already like this thinner cashmere. It's like you can put it through
the like air. It's like air. So how long did it take you to knit that?
So that was, this is a rectangle shawl, so I didn't do the square at that point. So that probably took me about 6 weeks.
A lot of knitting, though. A lot of knitting.
But like I was sort of like, okay, I'm reading the pattern, and the way that the pattern is written, it's written for people who have been knitting Shetland lace since they were 3.
Right. They were born knitting Shetland lace. Yes.
There's no explanation. There's just like, here, this is the chart, go for it, right? So I had so many questions. I was probably like driving everybody mad, because I was like, every second I had another question. I was like, I don't understand how to add the edging. I don't understand how to turn the corner. And so they were like so kind. They basically taught me how to do that. And then I was getting more into different kinds of lace. So I figure out at some point how to do Orenburg lace. I figure out how to do Estonian lace, but like Shetland lace, probably by far my favorite.
Yes. So do yours fit through a ring?
Yeah. I mean, the last shawl I did, this is also Monique Boomstra's.
Look at that. Oh my goodness.
So this is the picture that you have on your
Right.
cover.
Yes. Unbelievably beautiful.
And the best thing about this particular shawl, so usually in Shetland lace, the borders are very elaborate, but the middle part is usually pretty boring.
Uh-huh.
And this one is just like unbelievably beautiful, like
just beautiful. It's just so, and blocking is so fun when you see it open up.
It's like a butterfly, you know, it's like
Yes.
a butterfly emerging from cocoon. It just opens
Yes.
its wings.
So Mrs. Unnecessary made a wonderful statement here about when we were talking about, you know, loving your previous pieces with their faults and all, that you still love them. She says each piece tells a story and a timeline of your knitting journey.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly. In fact, I wish I had, you know, one of the things that I loved about Ravelry, or still love about Ravelry, is that it forced me to photograph my knitting. Prior to Ravelry, I never took any pictures of my knitting, and I don't have any history. All the things that I knitted before that I gave away, I have no sign of them. I have no proof of them. But Ravelry, that's when I just first started photographing my knitting and my yarn. And that's been huge because then it shows your story, your evolution. Exactly.
Well, it's also like that was one of the reasons I started Instagram account, because I was showing my knitting to like my family, my friends, and at some point they just like rolled their eyes and they asked me if I can make a dog sweater, you know?
Right, exactly.
So I started Instagram, and it's like such a wonderful place because it allows you to talk your language. It allows you to meet your people.
Yes, your people. It's like your blood relatives, only better. You know,
Right.
really it is. And I call them my people too. And that's like we talked before about that Stitches is coming up in Sacramento in March, and I hope that the coronavirus calms down enough that we can still do it, you know, because I miss seeing my people.
Right.
I want to see them. You know, they're part of my life. It's important. It makes me feel good. And like the conversations that we're having here and that you have with your interviewees and that I have with my interviewees, no one else talks to us about this kind of stuff. You can't talk in this in depth with your sister or your husband or your children's friends' mothers unless they are a knitter.
Yeah,
They don't get it.
Classy look, you know.
Yeah, they don't get it. It's
They
like,
love you, they support you. They just don't want to hear anything about it.
yeah, it's like I'm sure it's the same thing with people who are chemists and things like that, that ordinary people don't usually go around talking about chemistry, but they probably go to a chemistry function and they're talking about all the little things that they get to do and all excited about it. You know, it's really cool, and everybody else is rolling their eyes, you know?
But I also find it very interesting because I feel like when I talk to whoever I interview, I always learn something. So there is always some bits of information that I didn't know, or I didn't think about it in a certain way. So like I have this friend, Jack Strabel. So one time I was complaining to him that I was knitting this sweater and it was brioche in the round, which I never tried before. So I was concentrating on brioche in the round, and I sort of messed up like something very simple that I knew very well. And the whole time I was knitting, I was thinking something doesn't look right, but I sort of like was so concentrating on this brioche in the round that I ignored myself, right? And then I'm coming at the end of the day, I finished the thing and I understood what I did wrong. So I had to undo the whole entire thing. And Jax was like, well, I'm complaining to him. I'm like, I can't believe I wasted the whole day knitting it, and now I have to undo it. And he was like, listen, I just hear you spend the whole day knitting. Sounds good to me. And you told me the same thing, that when in your class, people start complaining about the cost of yarn, you compare it with the cost of going to the movie theater.
Yes, yes, it's all relative.
The payment runs you just extra time if you need to undo it and do it again. It's just extra payment for the same.
It's like, let's say you're a swimmer and you enjoy swimming and you swim from one end of the pool to the other, and you get out and somebody says, oh no, do it again. You go, darn, I have to swim again.
Right.
You know, that's the same thing with knitting. If you have to rip it out, guess what? You just get to prolong your enjoyment of that project. It's going to last longer and you get to enjoy it more. To me, it's of the flow of the yarn through my fingers. It's the feeling of the stitches. It's the rhythm of the needles. It's more than just having a finished project.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a process knitter, you know?
I'm sort of both. Like I like the project. I like to have my thing at the end of the row. Like I like to have that shawl to show people. But I also enjoyed the process as well. Um, and I really enjoy learning new things. So I think like that's why I sort of accomplished so much in the different knitting techniques and trying different knitting things, just because I was like, I felt like I wasted all of my life not knitting.
Right,
I was
right,
like, I
right.
wasted all those years, that I could have
That you
knitted.
could have been knitting. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Well, let me see what else I can learn. Well, let me learn brioche. Let me learn double knitting. Let me learn this lace and that lace and all these things. So I find it like very intriguing. And I always have this thing that I'm like, well, what can go wrong? Let me try. And I find also like I've done a lot of test knitting over the past few years. And I really love that because I feel like the designers put so much faith in me, faith that I wouldn't have in myself. Like they just like throw me some pattern. They're like, here, can you test this? And I'm like, well, I never done that. They're like, well, here's the pattern, just follow it, right? And
Right.
somehow at the end of the thing, like I have finished object that looks pretty good, So I feel like it's that knitting is also like requires certain bravery and certain to allow yourself freedom to make mistakes, to allow yourself freedom to experiment and to just see what's going to happen.
And to grow. To grow. Yeah. I'll tell you something that happened to me that you and I did not talk about on your interview of me. Is, a lot of times, I don't know if you have a profession outside of knitting. I don't know. We've never talked about that. But in my life, I always worked in the medical field. And so when you would go somewhere and there's other people, or oftentimes it was almost everything was work related. When you work, everything is work related. All your friends are from work. Do you know what I mean? And so people would say, well, what do you do? And I'd say, oh, I'm a physician's assistant. Well, I was at a function. This is after I did the master hand knitting program, but I was still working. I hadn't retired yet. And I was at a function and somebody said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a knitter. And it just came out of my mouth. It just came out of my mouth. It was like an epiphany. That's what I am. I'm a knitter. I work as a physician's assistant, but I'm a knitter, and it was like, it was huge. It was huge to me. So now I think of myself as a knitter. I'm retired. Thank goodness. That's wonderful. I got that part of my life over with, and now I get to do the next part of my life. But, and I think that we all, as knitters, I think we've got a little key inside our brain that we all have the same little key that opens up this knitting door, and that's what connects us together. It's like we've got that, or a little piece of shared DNA or something. We have something because we can come from all different backgrounds, all different, nationalities, nothing in common except knitting, and we will get along. We will get along.
I found interesting, so I was interviewing Louis Boria, Brooklyn Boy Knits, and he became very famous very fast because somebody took a picture of him knitting on the subway on his way to work, and that picture went viral. And it was like, so I was interviewing him, and he said, like, I don't want to be known as the boy who knits on the train. Like, I want to be known for more. So he does like a lot of things where he goes into public schools in New York, and he teaches kids how to knit. There's a bunch of volunteers, so he organized all of that. But the thing is, after I interviewed Louis, I got so many comments, and like so many people reached out to me and said, seeing Louis knit on the train gave me this, it's like allowed me to say that I'm a knitter, that I'm a male knitter. So I interview a lot of male crafters just for that reason also, because first of all, guys also like have this attitude of what can possibly go wrong, and they go and like in 2 years they learn more than some people learn in 60 years of knitting, just because they want to learn.
Right.
And also, like, I feel like we often inspire each other without even knowing. So him going on the train and being brave enough to pull his knitting out and knit publicly allowed so many people, other people, to do the same thing and to just to say to other people that yes, I'm a knitter, you know.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like your inner being. It's like something that comes from inside of you. It's not and for people that love knitting, whether they're a good knitter or not, you don't have to be a good knitter to love knitting. If it brings you joy, it
Right.
brings you joy. That's the bottom line. If it brings you joy, that's what it's all about. And um, I know that Stephanie Pearl McPhee, a long time ago in one of her books, she had a little thing about, yeah, people saying, "Oh, you must have a lot of patience." They come up to you and they see you knitting and they, "Oh, you must have a lot of patience." She said, "No, no, it gives me patience." It's like, can you imagine being in an airport and your plane is delayed? If you're not a knitter, you're going, "Oh my God," and you're stressing out and pacing up and down and trying to figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to make your next connection and this and that. But a knitter, no, they say, "Yay, more time to knit."
Right.
you know, get my knitting out. so
But
it's
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 also like it's also broke this whole stereotypical view of knitters that like it's only, you know, older women who have grandchildren, that it's only like I had person on the in one of my interviews who was like, you know, only crocheters can be younger, but the knitters are always older. And I was like, well, look at my 51 episodes and you'll see young people doing it, you know. So it's like it's also interesting, like, and we talked about it, that sometimes you think that certain people are known in certain circles, but like I was, so when I was interviewing Hazel Tyndall, I felt like everybody knows Hazel Tyndall. Then yesterday I was interviewing a guy who does machine knitting in Los Angeles, and he's like wonderful and super talented. And I was telling him about Hazel Tyndall telling me that story about yolks connected to the machine knitted body. And he had completely like blank face. He didn't know who she was. And then I was thinking like, well, she doesn't know who he is either, you know, it's like it's totally fine. So like we think that like all the people know each other, but then this whole channel sort of shows you the people that you've never met, you know, and they so
exactly,
far.
exactly. But we're still all connected together because we knit. It's just some people are over on this periphery over here, and some people are over on this periphery over here, and they haven't had the opportunity to intermix yet.
Right. But I also must tell you, it's the same thing with YouTube because I mean, I was knitting for 4 years, but I would only watch like YouTube tutorials. I didn't even know that the whole world of YouTube podcasts exist until I tried to get into that. And then suddenly I realized how many channels are there, you know? So it's like every time you try something new, you discover all the new sources and all the new people and you make new connections, you know?
Exactly, exactly. And there's always room for more people. There's always more room for creators. And you're a creator, not only just in knitting, but you're a interview creator. That's part of creating also. And I think you're really good at it. You are a natural interviewer because I felt super comfortable when you were interviewing me. It was a very non-stressful event.
Well, I guess like my main goal when I started doing this interview was to showcase the talents of the people in the community. So I'm not trying to trip anybody up. I'm not trying to ask questions that would make you look bad. I'm trying to show like how many wonderful creative people are there, you know? So it's like by default makes it nicer.
Exactly, exactly. So I'm going to ask you something that you asked me that was a really difficult question for me to answer. Outside of knitting and your YouTube and your Instagram, what else do you do?
Well, you know, besides my 3 children and 3 cats that I have to take care of, I worked as a construction designer, so I'm an engineer by trade. So that was something I did. I also love cooking. Don't love baking, but love cooking. But my daughter loves baking, so it's like perfect because she does what I don't like and I do what she doesn't like. Love to travel, love reading, love a good glass of wine, love meeting with friends, love going for a walk, beach.
So you said that cooking, not baking. That was interesting to me because I always lumped those two things together.
I think they're very different. And it's funny because I was interviewing a few indie dyers, and I figured there are baker indie dyers and cooking indie dyers. And so the difference is there are people who approach indie dyeing as a chemical experiment. So there is like exact formula, you have to follow the exact temperature, exact procedure to achieve the same exact color, and this is it. And then there are people who are like artists, and they approach indie dyeing as art. So they throw a little bit of pinch of that and a pinch of this and see what's gonna happen if you like bring it to this temperature or that temperature. And it's constant like experimentation. And not one is better than the other because there is excellency in each, but it's completely different results. And to me, baking is the same thing. For baking, you need precision. You need exact amount of sugar and exact amount of flour and to bring it to the exact temperature. Whereas cooking, you can be totally creative. You can, throw a pinch of that and a pinch of this.
But cooking, you can just do whatever you want.
Right.
And it comes out different every time if you want to. Well, I never thought about that.
Yeah, but it's funny because like when it comes to knitting, I'm more of a baker than the cook because I prefer to like follow the exact pattern than like it's scarier for me to like
But you're fearless. You're not, it's not scary. It might be scary when you're doing it, but you're fearless because you just jump in. You just go. If you want to try it, you try it. You don't say, "Oh, I need somebody to show me how to do this," or "I don't know how to do that. I can't do that yet." You just jump in.
But you know what? I feel like it's also acquired sort of determination. Like I don't think I was always like that, and I think this like YouTube channel happened at the right time for me when I was sort of like I grew up. I figured like it's time, like it's not now or never. Like what's gonna happen like if you wait longer? You're just never gonna do it. So you might as well try it. So it's like I feel like you have to come to some point when you feel like it's better to make fool of yourself than not trying to do it.
Yes. Now, something else you asked me, and I'm going to we can just talk about, I'm not asking you, but you asked me about if people how do I deal with negative comments on my YouTube channel? And I said, I really don't get very many for the number of views that I get. It's minuscule. And usually I just delete them. I don't want to look at them. And I have that control. That's one of the wonderful things about YouTube is that you have total control over the comment section. You can remove comments. And I don't remove very many. Maybe like I've done 10 in all these years, but it made me feel better to remove them. But I want to talk about that when you're making a YouTube video, and you're putting it on YouTube and you hit that public for it to be viewed publicly, you're opening yourself to the whole world for people to see you and think what they want or say what they want about you or your technique or what you do or this or that. And I think that it takes a lot of bravery to do that. It takes, again, being fearless because you don't, it's just it's like airing your dirty laundry, people, it's out there. And the only way you can take it back is to delete it. You can't change it like we talked about before. And it takes a lot of nerve, a lot of guts, a lot of fearlessness to do that. It really, really does.
And the funny part, like, part of me having panic attack every time I'm posting something, and I'm like, when people come back with not even critique necessarily, but like suggestions, it's hard not to take it as like negative comment, right? So I'm trying to like, I'm reading and my first reaction is like, oh my God, like it's horrible.
Because you're sensitive to it. You're sensitive. It's like birthing a child.
If they spend time writing this to me, maybe they trying to help me with something. And it's funny because So as I mentioned, my oldest one works at YouTube. So he wasn't living at home at that point when I started the YouTube channel. And he would come home every week and he would watch like a little bit. He wouldn't watch the entire episode, but he would watch like the beginning. And he would come and tell me, well, this was okay, like you did it better, but you should really work on that. So I was interviewing my good friend, designer of this shawl, David van de Kamp. And I started the interview, I introduced him, and then I was talking about him. And I was talking about him for probably like around 2-3 minutes. So my son goes, well, this introduction, how many sentences do you think you said? And I was like, I don't know. He said, 1. So that entire 3 minutes, you kept on saying and. So it's like those things that I notice now more, and I'm trying to be more aware. But it's hard, because when you're interviewing somebody and you're trying to concentrate on what to ask, it's hard to control your speech and try to sound proper. And with me, English is not my first language, so it's added stress,
Exactly. And just what you're talking about now is you're not only interviewing somebody, but you're trying to speak correctly. You're trying to not say, you don't want to say something stupid, like something just fly out of your mouth unexpectedly, like things do sometimes. And so let's all bring this to doing live. When I first started doing these live, because what you see is what you get. There's no editing on these, and it was really, really scary for me in the beginning. But they seem to come out okay, and so I've gotten over the fear of doing the live, and I kind of enjoy it, to tell you the truth. I like seeing everybody on here. I like seeing the comments, and you were talking about, all the things you have to do. It's like I'm looking over at the comments every once in a while and seeing what people are saying. And try to pull them in a little bit as you go. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. But honestly, I love every second of it. I love meeting new people. I love getting to know them. I love knowing that we're all human. It's like you interviewing people who have this goddess reputation, and then they talk about their frustration at marketing, their frustration when they put the pattern together and they think it's gonna sell and it doesn't sell, or when it does sell and then a mistake is found in the pattern. And everybody goes through these moments of frustration. Everybody goes through uncertainty. Everybody doubts themselves, and it's basically the people who succeed are those who ignore themselves, who don't listen to that doubting voice, who just keep on going.
You got to just keep moving forward. You got to keep moving.
That's what you have to do.
Right. And we were talking about this a little bit before we went live, is that you never know which video is going to really get viewed a lot. One that you think is, oh, this is really good, people are going to like this, nobody watches it. And then something else that you is just kind of off your radar, but you did, suddenly everybody's watching it. And sometimes it's really hard to figure out why they watch one over another. And I think it has to do with the algorithm with YouTube and whether, what time of day you put it up. And I mean, I've put up a lot of videos. I have more than 400 videos, and I've tried just about everything, and I have no idea what makes it run.
It's hard not to take it personally that you're doing something wrong. It's hard to say, well, this is just how YouTube works, or this is how Instagram works, because you're always trying to see what made the video that has the most views so successful, and how can I repeat that, and how I can avoid mistakes of the other ones. But sometimes it's just it's unavoidable. And I also find, I was talking today, I had an interview today, and I was talking to Scott Wallace, and I said, at the end of the day, even if nobody watched a single one of my interviews, I got to meet 51 absolutely amazing people and get to know them better. And now we're friends. And
yes.
It's a great feeling. So it was already something.
It's a gift. It's a gift.
Not a single view,
Yes, it's a gift. Well, I'm going to start wrapping this up. I absolutely loved having you on here today, and all of the viewers. Really, you could so many positive comments, and I'm going to keep watching your videos. I love them. I
I love
appreciate.
having you on my channel. It was such an honor. Thank you so very
Yes,
much.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to say goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.